Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I hope your day is going well and your afternoon is good. And it's definitely morning time in Las Vegas. So welcome. Right now, everybody is kind of joining in from the hold area. So we'll just give it another second before we begin.
What's the weather like there in beautiful Las Vegas, Kimberly?
I'm assuming it's pretty hot because I keep getting notifications that there's excessive heat warnings. So I think it's going to be a hot day. Just want to welcome everyone, International Market Centers and Las Vegas Market. Welcome you to our summer programming for Vegas Market. Today we have Kimberly Selden with Business of Design, and she'll be presenting Survive to Thrive. It is CEU accredited, and I will email you the form to submit tomorrow. So if you've missed any part of it as well, it is being recorded. So you'll be able to find it later on our website at lasvegasmarket.com and also on our YouTube page. And we have a lot of resources available to you. We encourage you to come to market if you feel that you can. We are having registration still take place, and we have 2 sessions available. And if you cannot join us on site, please visit our website because we do have many new resources available. We have Shop Zio, we have our different exhibitors in our exhibitor directory. We have a whole show house, Build the Room, that is being presented starting next week. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Kimberly and let her take it from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Sarah. We have been working with IMC and High Point Market for a number of years now, and I can say that back in February, you guys were already figuring out how you were going to make sure that those who visited market would be safe, and they have a lot of great protocols in place. And I was somewhat tempted to get in the car and make my way to Las Vegas, less tempted to get on a flight this year, but certainly holding out high hopes to be together at High Point. But the reality is everybody's still open. We're all still in business. And though we don't exactly know where this pandemic is going to net out, it is still an unfolding crisis. Most of us are feeling that, you know what, it looks like our industry will be spared the worst of the damage. That's not to say that we're going to ride through this completely unscathed. That would not be an accurate assessment. So I want to talk about Survive to Thrive. Give me 1 second technically here. How do I, there we go. Just click the button. Very fancy. I want to talk about some of the steps it's going to take to get from survive to thrive. And I want to talk about whether or not you even see yourself. Can you actually even see yourself getting through this in a really positive way? And more than that, could you see this as an opportunity that you not only get through this, but you come out the other side so much stronger and so much more prepared to build a thriving empire? And that's what we are, all of us. It's funny, most of us think of ourselves as small entrepreneurs. I'm a solopreneur, I just work from home, I don't have staff. That's what we hear at Business of Design all the time. That's the market that IMC and High Point deal with as well in terms of the designers. But all of that amounts to nothing. What matters is that you're part of this multi-billion-dollar industry, and our role at Business of Design is to make sure you're all prepared to take your piece of that pie. And the nice thing is it's a really big pie. It keeps growing. You being successful doesn't hurt me, and me being successful doesn't hurt you. Kim and Sarah are standing by, and they'll be looking at the Q&As to see if any of you have questions. So please feel free to throw down your questions, and I'm going to jump into the topic, which is survive. And I guess at the outset, I don't know where you were when you first realized that COVID was a thing, but I was in Los Angeles. I lived half the year in Los Angeles and half the year in Toronto. So we were in the LA part of the year, and I was about to head out to Bali and New Zealand to do a yoga retreat and be all zen. And it was late February, beginning of March, and we were hearing all of these reports, and I was like, still, I'm gonna go, it's gonna be fine, I'm gonna go. You're probably like that too. Most designers I meet are fairly optimistic, we're fairly rugged, we're fairly tough, we're not easy to dissuade once we have our mindset on something. But sure enough, by mid-March, things were looking pretty grim. And then, of course, a kind of a pall set over all of us. Everybody began to feel like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And I think what we're discovering is it's not great. I would never be so selfish as to say, because my industry is going to survive, this is great. There are industries that are devastated, and there are human beings that are devastated. And so we can all agree it's horrible. But our focus today is to talk about your interior design business. And I would say the image that really stood out for me was this one, of this road that's bumpy. Because just as soon as we, in fact, Kim and Sarah and I were talking before you all jumped on the call, that I was thinking 3 months ago that I would just get on a plane and be in Las Vegas in July, no problem. And of course, every month it's kind of a different story, right? So I think this image reminds me that it's going to be a bit of a bumpy road, but we've been here before. I want to talk about what it means to be a lagging indicator. So a lagging indicator, a financial sign that becomes apparent only after there's a huge, large shift that's taken place. We confirm the fact that something's going on. We don't predict the fact that something is going on. So what does that mean? That means there's this pandemic, this crisis, and a whole bunch of things happen, and the economy does what the economy does. There are ups, there are downs, there are upheavals. And our business, for whatever reason, is slow to get hit hard. What tends to happen is we get hit a little bit harder later as other people are recovering. And I'm going to start with the bad news. There's more good news ahead, I promise, but that's bad news. If you are right now looking at your projects, and let's say in March, you had a dozen great projects on the go and you were overwhelmed and so busy. And there's part of you, if you're anything like me, there's part of you that went, wow, I don't really mind if things slow down a little because it's a little crazy, right? So I was feeling really good. I've got all these projects in the hopper. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to ride this out. Now, I've been in the business a long time. I'm approaching 30 years in the industry, and that means I've been through some other recessions. So I remember 2008. And this happened in 2008 as well, a big economic shift. And what happened then is I had a lot of projects on the go. I'm like, we're fine. We're going to ride this out. And what happened was I was able to finish all those projects, but the new projects that came in didn't replace the value or the prestige of the former projects. And so I found myself in 2009 and 2010 doing almost exclusively kitchens and baths. Kitchens and baths, which is great. I was super grateful to be employed and not be unemployed. But the reality is it's not nearly as much fun as doing a whole house top to bottom. So be aware as you're looking ahead and you're imagining what next month and the month after and the month after looks like. We might have to do a lot of work right now to put some business in the pipeline to make sure we're covered in the months that are coming. I also want to remind us, it's going to be a long, long, long road to recovery. There was a moment months ago where I thought, this could be really hard hit, and we're going to take a hit, and then we're going to recover quickly. A lot of experts were saying that, a lot of financial experts. And the reality is now everybody's saying, no, we don't think it's going to be like that. We think it's going to be a long, slow road to recovery. That's good information because again, I want to make sure I'm keeping my client pipeline filled, and I know I have to put in some extra effort now to make sure I've got projects after next month and after that month, etc. Excuse me, one second. I have a drink of water here. And then I'm going to ask you about decisions. I think a lot of people, well, and I'm not making this up actually, through Business of Design, we have members in 50 countries around the world. They're not all paid members. There are people who subscribe to the newsletter and they listen to the podcast and they come every time we're doing an event, but they're very committed to our philosophies and they're all telling us the same thing. That right now they're really at a fork in the road. And for people who were really struggling in, let's say, the end of 2019, you're really struggling, you barely have any clients and you're just not having fun anymore. The decision you're going to make now might be different than the decision of somebody who is having their best year ever and might in fact still be having your best year ever. The reality is, if you had a lot of projects on the go, nothing may have changed. You might still be having your best year ever. So the first thing I want to talk about is making a decision and making an intention around where you're going to be a year from now when this is over, and it will be over. We will not return to normal. There never is going to be the old normal again. It's gone. Something new will be in its place. And, in so many instances, I think what we're going to find that's new is going to be great. And certainly in terms of how we're able to use market, I think is going to be so much more improved because the vendors have really had to step up and meet us halfway in terms of meeting our needs and making sure they're attending to the designer market who brings them a lot of business. So I think that's going to be good. But the decision, I think, we all have to make early in this. In fact, I think the time is now, or maybe you've already made it. Am I going to survive whatever this is, this pandemic moment we're having? Am I going to survive it intact as I was? Am I going to come out as good as I was when this whole thing started? Or am I going to survive, and am I going to use this moment in time to pivot, to change direction, to get rid of the things I don't want to do more of the things I do want to do, to embrace some of the strategies and tools and procedures I know I need to embrace but have never had time. I'm going to use this time to do that. Or am I going to fold? Is it game over for me? And I bring that up, obviously not as I'm trying to convince you to get out of business, but it is a reality for some people that now is a moment where they just don't have the energy to reinvent themselves. And so you might be thinking, instead of being a sole proprietor, you might be thinking, maybe I'm going to go work for another designer for a while. So that, I would say, would come under the category of fold. I think it's important to set an intention around how you see yourself in the future, because the subconscious mind will work really hard to make sure that happens. So I would rather, for myself, I'll just speak for my own business, and we have a full design build business. I don't just teach interior design, I live it. In fact, I was saying before you guys jumped on the call that I have my very first COVID step 5 presentation today. It's a job that we started during COVID. It's a job that we're doing a presentation during COVID. So I'll let you all know how it goes. So I'm actually in the business too, and I'm having to make the same decisions as you guys are. Do I want things the way they were, or do I want something new? Do I want something different? Do I want something better? And I went with number 2. I want something different, something better. So that kind of informed the conversation we're going to have today in terms of the road to thrive, and I'll get into that. It's also a really important time, if you haven't already done this, and some of you are already like, oh, I've done this already, but to shore up client relationships. I went back years, maybe 15 years, and I re-looked at my list of clients, and I thought, I haven't heard from a couple of them in a while. I'm going to reach out. And one of them, the fact that I reached out, kickstarted a project, which we're going to be starting in a month, looks like. That was actually partly my intention. I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, I'm just such a good person, I just wanted to see how they were. No, I want my company to be here 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So part of it was, making sure they knew I was still in it. But part of it was genuine. These are clients that I love. And, once you have systems and strategies and protocols you can rely on, you can make your clients happy every single time you work for them. And that means at the end of 10, 15 years, you're going to have a long list of customers you're going to want to shore up those relationships with. So that's what I did. I sent an email to them. In fact, I'll tell you a little bit about what it said, but The point was just to connect with them and to stay involved in their lives. And so in March, end of March, we had clients I had reached out to, hadn't heard back from them. I thought was really weird. I reached out again. She said, we are in Hawaii. This is like March 20 something. So it's getting quite late in the crisis. And she said, we're in Hawaii. They have 4 children. We're having a hard time getting home. But we're aiming to fly home and be back in the next few days. So I said, what's happening at your house? Do you have food? Do you have groceries? She said, we don't have anything. So I went out and I filled their house with fresh fruit and vegetables and groceries and paper towel, but no toilet paper. I could not find any toilet paper. So they were on their own with what they'd already had at home. But to me, that's exactly the way that I want to be as a human being. And it's self-serving because, of course, that relationship with that client is cemented for life. She's told everybody we know mutually that we went out and did that grocery shopping for her, and she was so grateful. So connect with them, stay involved with their lives, check in on homeschooling, how is it going, all the things that we do, that we imagine. And then the second part of it really hit me by surprise, and that was to not make assumptions. My assumption when I reached out to my clients is they're not going to do a project right now. There's no way they're doing a project right now. Nobody's doing a project right now. That could not have been more wrong. Every single client has something they want to do because they're sitting at home staring at their walls, and they realize there are things that could be made so much better. So don't make any assumptions about whether or not your client wants to do anything with you. And probably this last one goes without saying, but neediness is repulsive. Nobody likes someone who's desperate. So whatever you do, the approach is soft, the approach is kind, the approach is caring, and you never let them know that you desperately need the work. I sent an email very early on, just kind of explaining, like, I know everybody's struggling. We totally empathize. How is the family? How's the dog? How are all the things going? And then I let them know how my team was doing. I was able to say that, Cheryl's doing great. She lives in a rural setting. She's got lots of land around her. Her kids are super happy. She's gonna, bubble up with her sister and her mother. So she's in really great shape. Kathy, who works for me, her husband was let go. She's very concerned about what's going to happen next. So I'm doing my best to keep her busy and employed. And I found just telling them a little bit about my team, what was happening. So many of them reached out and said, oh, so happy to hear about Cheryl and Randy, and happy to hear about Isoon. And what are you going to do for Kathy? Does she need work? Because we're thinking we need built-ins. So they right away came back and said, here's a project. Is this too small for you to take on? The third point there, offer help, not necessarily design related. Tell them, is the example of the groceries, tell them about ongoing projects. So here's what happened. This legitimately happened, and I thought I would just share it with you. I had reached out to clients in the way that I'm talking about, and one client said to me, are you actually getting any jobs? And I said, well, not really. I said, I did have one client ask me to get her new patio furniture. And she said, oh, we need patio furniture. And I said, oh, you do? And before you know it, I have 3 jobs about outdoor patio furniture, which is great. And it was a little bit more complicated than I thought it would be in terms of sourcing it and getting things delivered. But the nice thing is, because it was outside, that made it a little bit easier on our team to get everything done. And in fact, yesterday I was at a client's working with the electrician to move a light fixture that he had put a little bit too high. So I found just sharing with clients what I was doing for other clients made them think about projects that they also wanted to do. I'll also mention that I've had a lot of my same trades people. I call them my A team, the trades that I rely on over and over and over again that make my clients happy. I've had a lot of those same people now for many years, and the clients know and love them. So I also reached out to particular clients about particular tradespeople. Gary, my cabinet maker. Gary is a little bit concerned. He doesn't have enough jobs in the hopper. I know you talked about doing some built-ins in the basement last year. Was there any way you guys would consider that sooner rather than later? And one of my clients got back and said, absolutely no problem. Gary was so grateful, so thankful. It was fun for me to be able to make that connection, and it just kept the clients, you know, reminded about some of the services that we offer. And obviously, and with positivity. As the pandemic has gone on, my correspondence with my clients has changed a little bit. I now send them movie recommendations. I send them pictures of my garden. I've never had a really big garden. I don't know how to cook. I'm learning how to cook. So I send them recipes that are super easy. I just kind of keep them involved in my life to establish that relationship. And in a very selfish way, that's paying off nicely with jobs that keep coming in. So that's just something to do in terms of survive. And then I'm going to move on to thrive, I promise. The last part of survive, I think, you know, there never really is going to be another opportunity in our lives. I hope that we will be forced to slow down, go home, stay home, and have the opportunity to evaluate our business in the way that we have an opportunity now. So the 4 categories of evaluation I think would be really important. Payment vulnerabilities. If you have any payment vulnerabilities, if clients owe you money, then there's a problem in how you deliver your business. One of the things I resented more than anything 20 years ago when I hired my first business coach is that chasing clients for money. I found it humiliating, and I thought, I'm going to create a business model that means I never have to chase clients for money again. There's a huge divide and those people who reach out to us, those designers who reach out to us, between the designers who are following business of design systems and strategies and the ones who aren't, because the ones who are following it don't have any cash flow issues. Nobody owes them money. It's all fine. So if that's going on for you, something drastic has to change, and now's a perfect time to make those changes. Expenses. We're all looking at our expenses. I'm spending more on Netflix and purchasing movies, and I'm spending nothing on restaurants and dining out. So my expenses are changing a lot, which isn't a bad thing. From time to time, we do want to kind of reevaluate and reassess. Do I really need that Aptiv app that I am not using? Should I give it up and instead do my yoga studio app or whatever it is? Income possibilities, I think, are identifying those clients who could potentially do some work. And whether you ask them directly, hey, I've got a team over here that needs to stay employed. I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing your kitchen now. I know that seems crazy, but lots of clients are asking for it. So I'm just thinking about who are those clients that might offer us an income possibility. And then it's also a really good time to think about new offerings. Is now the time that I should be introducing e-design? Is now the time I should be doing packages? At Business of Design, we hosted a webinar on creating packages. I think packages are a really great thing to introduce at a time like this. And in fact, the first time I introduced packages was 2008. And we were getting people calling the office for a consultation. It was probably 2009 by this point. But the economic downturn was severe. It hit us really hard. I had a big staff at that time and an office building, very high overhead. And we were getting calls to come out for consultation, and people weren't booking the consultation because it seemed expensive. Or I would go to the consultation and we weren't getting a project because it seemed expensive. So in desperation, I thought, I'm going to do a 20-hour package, give people a limited fixed fee amount that they could spend and get them to try us and trust us and see how that goes. So I've learned a lot since 2009, and I don't recommend a generic 20-hour package. I think there's better ways to do it, but now is the time, for example, to consider what are the things you might be offering that you've never had a chance to offer before. Now, as I move into or as we move toward thriving, we have to talk about positioning. So what is positioning? Positioning is where clients see you in the market, where you position yourself in terms of getting new customers and new clients. It's about branding, it's about fees, it's about where do you see yourself down the road. Most of us begin the journey to expertise, let's say, as a generic service provider. So I graduated from design school. I didn't know anything about design. I go out into the world and I'm like, I just want jobs, any job, any job, any client. I don't care. I'm not discerning because I just need to put some experience under my belt. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of us have found ourselves in that position before, but if you must go there, you should be there a very short time, because that's the level on the expertise scale that's the lowest, and therefore it's the least valued. So if you think of it like a doctor, if you had a severe kidney problem that was super complicated, would you want to go to your general practitioner who has a general idea of how kidneys work, or would you take the trouble to go to the kidney expert? I'm joking all the time when we do our Business of Design monthly coaching. I'm always talking about my neck because of Zoom. I can really see my neck here. I'm like, oh, I really need a neck lift. And when I think of that, if I was really going to go get a neck lift, which I actually would love to get a neck lift, but if I was actually going to do it today, would I be looking for the plastic surgeon who does all plastic surgery? We do eyes and noses and breasts and necks, or would I be looking for the plastic surgeon who is the expert in necks? And the answer is obvious, right? I'm going to look for the person who knows exactly how to do necks. And I'm going to be prepared because of that expertise to pay more money. So it's self-evident, we all know this. The second part is specialist. So now, okay, I did the thing where I did the generic commodity level service. I'll take any job for anyone. And now I'm like, no, I'm not going to take any job for anyone. I am only going to do kitchens and baths. That's going to be my specialty. I'm going to thrive there. I'm going to make more money there. And the reality is you are going to make more money there because you're specialized. But when you get there to that particular snack bracket, you're going to find that you're not alone. There's lots of other people in that pool. And so as you're looking around and thinking, where's my sweet spot? You don't want to be in a crowded place. You want to be in a place where there's not too many, because the more specialized you are, the more likely I'm going to fly to see you. If you're my general practitioner and you decide to move 3 hours away, I'm not going to get in my car to go to my annual checkups to see you. It's just too far, probably, right? I'm going to find someone who's closer. But if you are my kidney specialist and I have a very rare condition and only a handful of experts know anything about it, and you move across the country, I'll get on a plane to go see you. So I'm in it for a lot more money because of that expertise. The third level, as we move up the pyramid, is, I'm just obviously making this up. Maybe you guys could think of a better way to describe it. But now you are not just a specialist. You are an award-winning specialist. You stand out among specialists. And again, you'll have more money because of that. So for me, I've been so lucky because I've had so many opportunities to do television and have my own TV series. So I was able to go from service provider to award-winning specialist just by virtue of the fact that I was so well known. And that meant the phone was ringing, 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 which sounds great, and it was great, but without the systems and strategies and procedures I needed to satisfy those clients, I was not loving it. I was not having a great time. But nonetheless, we're making our way up the path, and now we're talking about big recognition. So between service provider, which is commodity, and huge recognition, every single step along the way means you're going to be more profitable and you're going to have more fun with your job. So early when I said you want to think about, am I going to survive intact, or am I going to survive and pivot? One of the ways you might be considering pivoting is by narrowing your focus, tightening your focus so that you can step up that ladder and become more well known for the one thing that nobody does as well as you do. That was hard for me to accept because I want all the jobs. I've worked for myself since I was 14 years old. I am wired to say yes to all the jobs, and that's not necessarily the best place to be, certainly not the best place to be in terms of profitability. So there is some discipline involved in forcing myself to narrow that positioning, if you will. So what are we going to do to get from the commodity of being a generic service provider? Everybody's doing what I'm doing, which is I want all the jobs. I decorate, I stage, I landscape, I build houses. I do it all. How can I get from being that generic service provider to the highest level of recognition, where I'm a sought after person that people come to for advice? I want you to think a little bit, and you might write some of this in the Q&A. By the way, Kim and Sarah are standing by looking at the Q&A. You guys can butt in at any point if someone has a question that I kind of need to address. I'm totally comfortable with that. But in the meantime, think about what are those ways that I behave like a vendor or a service provider or a generic commodity. How do those people behave? I can't see your faces, so I don't know if you have a great answer. So I'll have to give the answers too, but maybe some of you will put some in the Q&A and then I'll be able to see them. In what ways does a vendor behave? Oh, I shared one of the ways, the way that I'm wired. I want all the jobs. Vendors want all the jobs. Doesn't matter if it's in the right neighborhood, doesn't matter if it's the right price point. If they don't want to spend $50,000, but they have $5,000, I still want the job. So that's one way a vendor might behave. Another way a vendor might behave has to do with fees. I'm going to keep my fees low because I want everybody to be able to afford me. Remember the big push, that's about 10, 15 years ago, everybody can afford a designer. No, that should not be true. That is not true. It's kind of like the Vegas thing, Kim and Sarah might be familiar with, which is, remember how it was what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and then they went through this period where it's like, Vegas is family friendly. No, it isn't. Stop it. It's just not true, right? Lowering your fee does not mean you're going to, well, it may mean that you attract more customers, but it doesn't mean you're going to attract the kind of customers who are going to actually make your business thrive and be profitable. So the vendor has to do with a lack of discernment around which jobs to take. It has to do with lowering your fees, and it has to do with dabbling in all services, I would say. So that decorator who's also a stager, who also does e-design, who also does, you name it, whatever it is. So those are kind of an indication that you're not dealing with the expert. The vendor will also always say yes. You want me to come to your house on a Sunday and do a consultation in your backyard? Yes. Where an expert would say, I'm sorry, we don't work on Sundays. I can book an appointment with you 3 weeks from Thursday, right? So just give some thought to in what ways. I personally, when I think about this, I am hardwired top to toe to be a vendor, because the way that I was raised was don't rock the boat, get along. Nobody likes a mouthy broad, be of service, be self-sacrificing. And so I am just by default, I am the vendor. I can't help it, but I have over the years been able to clip those parts of my personality a little bit and become more of an expert. And then when I say become more of an expert, how does the expert behave? The expert says, these are the rules. If you want to work with me, this is how it's going to go. The expert says, this is what I charge, and then stops talking. The expert doesn't justify. The expert doesn't have to convince you that you want to work with them, because it's so enticing to get to the expert. You know that feeling where you just want that person to help you because you can tell that's the person? That's what an expert experience is like. And I'm constantly having to be aware in all communication, in emails, in phone calls, in face-to-face visits, of presenting myself as an expert rather than the vendor. And it's not just because I have a fragile self-esteem. It's because when I behave as an expert, my clients win. My clients can relax. My clients can trust knowing they've hired the right person. When I behave like a vendor, I make my clients uncomfortable because I'm too flexible, allowing anybody to set the pace and set the rules. So I'm happy to share this PowerPoint, by the way, at the end. If anybody wants it, you just want to print that out for whatever reason and do that exercise. I do think it's a worthwhile exercise. Narrowing my focus has been something that I've struggled so hard with because I do love a lot of things. I don't want to just do kitchens. I want to do the whole house top to bottom. And when I think about narrowing my focus, it's about that category that I want to work in, kitchens and baths versus the whole house. That's a category. But it can also be a whole bunch of other things. I could narrow my focus to a particular neighborhood. I only want to work in this neighborhood. And I say that because I want to limit the amount of time I'm in my car. I want to narrow the focus to be those customers who can afford my services. And I know if I do a whole bunch of projects in a small neighborhood, you're going to see my signs all over the neighborhood. And that kind of marketing is invaluable. Where if I'm doing projects all over the city, all over, you know, a rural area, I'm going to be scattering those efforts. When I focus on the one thing, and I do that one thing over and over and over again, I become an expert. It happens without me having to work at it, right? So I have to recognize that there are only so many hours in the day and there's only so many things I'm going to be good at. I can also use this rule of thumb in terms of scheduling my own time to work on projects. I know for myself, I'm good at about 3 things out of 1,000 things you have to be good at if you have an interior design business. I'm really good at meeting the customer and convincing them that they should do a project with us. That I'm good at that. I'm on in those moments. I'm really good, I think, at determining what the overall look of the project is going to be and then sourcing a lot of the furniture, fabrics, and that kind of stuff, which is why I love to go to market, because that's my opportunity to meet the vendors and say, you know, what's new, what's happening, what have I missed, what are the new trends, show me something I've never seen before. I get turned on by that, and I'm great at that, so I love to do that. But I'm not good at drawing. I'm terrible at drawing. In fact, I don't even know how to do AutoCAD, which is what we use in our office. Thank God I don't know how to do it, because if I did know how to do it, I'd probably be doing that on my weekends and my 1 or 2 free hours. So I can also use this to narrow down the tasks I want to do within my own business. One of the best exercises I ever did for myself, I made a list of what I loved and what I loathed. And then I decided to create systems and strategies, particularly for the things that I loathed, so that I could delegate those things. Because once you write down how you do something, you can hand it off to somebody else to do. But if it's in my head, I found that just never allowed me to make it happen. No matter where you are on the spectrum, there's never going to be another formula that's better than this one, I don't think, in terms of figuring out what should I focus on. I believe from the beginning, my first day in design school, I wish they had told me that it was 80% business and 20% creative, because I went to design school thinking it was 100% creative, and I was all in, and that's all I wanted to do. And the paperwork was boring. I didn't want to do the paperwork. I'm not a suit. I don't want to be like a bank. That's not what I went to design school for. The minute, though, I discovered the hard way, the minute you take a client's hard-earned money, you are now a business, and you have to behave as businesses behave. And businesses have a whole lot of things that are written in stone, a whole lot of rules and structures that are written in stone. For example, I was doing a coaching call the other day, and someone said, well, there's an issue with my contract because when I made a contract for this particular client, I forgot to put in this other clause that I usually have in there, but I didn't have it in there for this other job, and I copied and pasted. And I'm like, wait, what? You have a different contract for every client? That's crazy, right? If I go to the phone company, they don't sit down and say, okay, let me cobble together a contract for Kimberly Seldon, they give me the same contract that everybody else has. There might be a couple fill in the blanks. She's got this phone and that data package instead of this other one, but the contract is the same. And the beautiful thing about that sameness is every single task you have in your business, great or small, if you can write down how to do it and have a formula for how to do it, you never have to do it again because someone else could do it. And then the other good thing is once you have those formulas for that 80% that's business, which took me many years to get, by the way, but now I love. Once you have those in place, you never have to think about them again. They work like clockwork. They don't bother me. I never worry about them. And what that did for me is it meant that I could then approach the 20% that was creative with my full intention, my full passion. Suddenly, my projects got better and bigger because I wasn't distracted by paperwork that I didn't want to do and wasn't going to go away and was the bane of my existence. So I wish on the first day of design school I had gotten this lesson. Instead, I remember distinctly our design teacher said, how many of you want to make some money in this business? And he has a cigarette, right? That's how old I am. That was back in the day. You got a cigarette. How many of you want to make money? And a few little hands went up. Interestingly, the guys in the class, their hands went up, but the women were kind of like, So then he said, well, you're in the wrong business. You should do anything but this. If you stay in this business, you're going to die broke and bitter like me. And that was a real disservice. The fact of the matter is, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have gone to design school. I'd have gone to business school, and I would have gotten where I am so much faster because the principles of business have to be applied to this business. The creative part, we got that. We're good at it. No problem. But the business part becomes really important, particularly in a climate like now, where if I'm planning on thriving, now is an opportunity for me to tweak all of those systems I have in the business management side. For example, I mentioned that Business of Design has a 15-step project management strategy. It's actually Kimberly Seldon Design Group's 15-step project management strategy. And every single step is so specific to what is going to happen on a project at a specific time. And so I never have to think, should I do that now or should I do that later? What step am I on? Because it's really clear for me. And then the benefit, of course, to clients is it's super clear to clients too. Clients always know what step they're on. And in fact, I had recently a client say to me, oh, I'm just dying to see this bench that's going to be in the front entranceway, but I know that's step 9. I know we're not at step 9. I'm like, it's so cute. She actually referred to the steps. I'm like, that's awesome. Because when I first started out, there was chaos all the time with everything I did. So the last bit of push is I have to, if I'm going to survive intact or survive and pivot, I hope, I don't have to, I hope that I'll take advantage of the fact that right now, this moment, we have an opportunity to fine-tune our businesses, to build better relationships with our clients, to build better relationships with our suppliers. I actually use the people I buy furniture and fabrics and carpets from. I use them as an extension of my team. I have a relationship with them then, so that when I have a need, I can go to them and say, remember the project we did 2 years ago and we used the blah, blah, blah carpet? I want something like that, but different because this client likes blah, blah, blah. And then they go and do the sourcing and they send me an image and I go, that's it. I don't have to spend as much time because I've fostered and developed those relationships. And I think what we're all learning now, that the world is in fact very small, that we can't get away from relying on each other. And that, you know, in my world, it makes sense to me that I want to surround myself with people who are on the same path and intend to survive, intend to thrive. And they're not going to take no for an answer. We might have some tough days ahead in terms of, you know, projects being difficult to deliver on, in terms of clients not wanting to spend as much money perhaps as they once did. It will all come back. It will all come back. It's always cyclical. But now is a perfect time for me to really double down on the systems and strategies I need to make sure I can make my clients happy. And together, of course, we can do this so much better. I want to share this last thing with you, which I learned. I went to a seminar in New York with a company called Win Without Pitching. And this was my favorite takeaway at the seminar. And I've since had Blair on the podcast and asked him with permission if we could kind of adapt this. And we are using almost the exact same words he's using. So I always like to credit him. But this is my new mindset. And this is the business of design mindset. I am the expert, I am the prize. If I can say that to myself, and if I can mean that, and if I can know that, I don't have to live in that low-lying level of being a generic commodity service provider. I can begin to step up higher on the evolutionary chain and step into and own the fact that, you know what, I'm really good at these certain things, and clients would be happy to pay me for these certain things. I am the expert. I am the prize to be won. And the next part of it's really important to me, and probably to you too, if you're a people pleaser, and most of us designers are. I'm actually on a mission to help. I want to be helpful to clients. It makes me happy to make clients happy. But bending myself into a pretzel, being flexible on all my rules, offering to work weekends when that isn't right, taking less money, none of that made my clients happy. It made me miserable. I can be helpful and have clear, firm boundaries because I'm the expert. If I'm the expert, I know what the rules are. The client doesn't know what the rules are because they're not an expert at this, but I am. And I am on a mission to help. And this is the third one, is something I've only recognized in the last 5 or 6 years. I can only help if I lead. I have to be the lead on the project. I have to have meaningful expertise in the game. Otherwise, I can't succeed. Simple example, I got hired to work on a project where the clients had already hired the contractor. You already know what I'm going to say, right? This is a disaster. We had a 32-page drawing package, excuse me, complete with switching plans and details and electrical schemes and demolition plans, framing plans, all of it was in there. And when I went to the job site the first time to meet the contractor, he asked me if I brought my little sketches with me. I mean, really, my little sketches. And that project went on from there. It was a terrible project. Luckily, I'm still friends with the clients. They recognized finally that he was not the guy. But I had to finally accept that if I can be the lead on the project, if I can determine who the other tradespeople are working on the project, then I know I can make the client happy. If I can be the person who does the purchasing, on last month's call, we had someone who was from North Carolina, and she said she hates it because her clients think they can go to market where they can go to market and they can buy without her. They've made relationships with people. But the reality is clients don't hire us because we have trade discounts. Clients hire us because our work, the work we do, is really hard. It's complicated and it's complex. And if a client wants to go around you and order furniture straight from the supplier, good luck. We know things are going to go wrong, right? We know they don't have the expertise that we have. So I am the expert. I am the prize. I am on a mission to help. I can only help if I lead. And then there are going to be those people who do not follow you, which means you're going to have to let go of having 100% of the jobs, right? There are some clients who just can't allow you to be in charge. And those are the clients that I have to let go of. Now, I just want to say this too. If you're new to business, or if your business is really struggling, you haven't hit your sweet spot yet, you might be thinking, well, this is all well and good for you, Kimberly, but I'm going to take every job because I need the experience. There's no shame and there's no judgment if you need the job and you take the job, but take the job eyes wide open and make changes as soon as you can. When a client doesn't want to follow my lead, I know the best thing is for me to let them go. And so I had a job in 2018 or end of 2018, I think I shared it on the podcast, that everything was going great. And then the husband said, you know what, I've decided I'm going to do the project management. We'd already done the presentation and everything was done. And I'm like, really? Wow, okay. that isn't going to work. And the client said, oh, no, we really want you to stick around because we're going to need you. I'm going to need to consult, but we have to rein in expenses. I said, I'm really sorry. This is where we part. I'm going to give you everything I can give you, and you're on your own. And then sure enough, I just heard back from her during the whole COVID thing. I reached out to say, hey, how are you? How's the project going? It's a mess, and they want me to come back. And I'm so grateful because I can say, I'm so sorry. I can't help you now. I know it's a mess. I told you it would be a mess. I begged you not to do it. But it's not going to be my job to clean up that mess anymore. If I was, 20 years younger and really hungry for business, yeah, I would have gone back in and I would have cleaned up that mess. So I'm always aware that as I'm doing these kinds of conversations, we're all in a different place. And I want all of you to be thriving and to be successful. And I'm going to do one quick pitch. I hope you'll all consider Business of Design membership. We're relaunching the site in the late fall. The prices are going to be increased fairly substantially because we're grossly undervalued for what we deliver. When Business of Design started, it was never intended to be its own company. I just wanted to help. It was my give back project. But in fact, now our expenses have grown and our team has grown, and I have to keep paying the bills. So we're going to give ourselves a long overdue increase. So now is a great time to become a member, all of that said. I also want to say that having been through several recessions before, and hopefully Kim and Sarah will come back now, and if there are any questions, we still have 10 minutes. So that was pretty good timing wise. I've been through recessions before. It's always a cycle. It can be painful in the short term, and it can be so satisfying in the long term that now really is the best time to get everything in-house in order to cement the rules of engagement, to cement the details in your contract, to firm up the relationships you have with your vendors who can help you look spectacular to your clients. And I would actually even say that, for many people, 2021 will be the best year that they've ever had. I don't know that I could say 2020 is going to be the best year that any of us had, because even if business is great, chances are we've got friends or loved ones who are struggling for whatever reason. But the truth is, it always is a cycle, and we will come out of this stronger and smarter and better. Provided we take advantage of what the universe has brought us, which is this huge opening of time to make changes that we've been wanting to make the changes we've been wanting to make anyway, if that makes sense. So I'm going to stop my share. I think that might be the right thing to do. And I'm going to see if Kimberly and Sarah, I see some stuff in the chat. Let's see. Hi.
Yes, one of the things, they wanted some printouts, if those might be available from you. Okay. And we do have one question. What is your best marketing advice for those re-entering the design field who can't rely on past clients for referrals, for getting business during these times? Advertising hasn't been converting for them. So what would your advice for them be?
It's interesting, like years ago, we all used to talk about networking. It's, you've got to do it. And then we kind of went like, no, you don't really need to do that because of like social media and Insta. And the reality is, guess what? You have to network. I tell people, imagine you're moving to a brand new town and you're all by yourself suddenly, and you have children and you have to feed them. How willing would you be to do what it takes to get a job? And the answer is pretty willing, right? For me, I don't want to ask people directly for a job. I find it embarrassing. I don't know why, I just do. But if I had 2 little kids to feed, I would go directly to someone and say, I'm looking for work as an interior design professional. What do you have? Well, you must be thinking of doing a kitchen. I'd love to help you with your kitchen. I think it's a really good time to be direct. I also think there are probably retail stores, retail vendors, or even wholesale suppliers and vendors who you could tell them what you're looking for. And if they have product that's your dream product to place for someone. So I'll make it simple. You go to High Point and you go to Noir, because they have a big showroom on the main floor. You go to Noir and you're like, this is it. This is my dream. I only want to sell to people who like this look. Then I would definitely make a relationship with Noir, and I would tell them, all I want to do is speak to clients who like your look. Where can I get my first and second client from? And I would be very direct about it. So I think that's the best thing that you can do, is just ask for business. It's hard, so I tend to use humor. Yesterday I was at a client's house doing a visit in the backyard, and things have gone terribly crazy during COVID. Like the cushion shop was open and now they're closed, and we don't know when they're opening again. Like, it's just been a little bit crazy back and forth, and therefore it's been a little bit expensive. And I said to the client, oh my gosh, you're never gonna let me go to your cottage now, because he's been saying we want to get you up to do the cottage. So I said, oh, you're never gonna let me go to the cottage now, which is my, I guess, passive aggressive way of saying, can we do the cottage? And he turned around, he goes, no, you're gonna do the cottage. You're gonna do the cottage. I'm like, oh, phew, I'm gonna do the cottage. So I find that I'll do things like that. Like, I'll mention to the client, come on, seriously, we gotta do the kitchen. You said we're gonna do the kitchen. I think we just have to be direct. Somebody wrote in the chat, yeah, no is a complete answer. We talked about that at Business of Design conference at Las Vegas Market, that in fact, sometimes the answer is just no, and anything you say after that will diminish your value as an expert. And I have a technique that I shared at the conference with everybody, which I probably shared all over the world, but my technique is, when I have to say no, or I have to deliver a very big number that's terrifying, so I'll stop talking, I sit on my hands. So I'll say, I'm gonna need a check today for $688,000. And then I have to sit on my hands, because everything in me wants to go like, oh my God, can you believe how much money that is? That's crazy. And that is just not what I'm gonna say as the expert. So I say, I'm gonna need a check today for $688,000, and I sit in my hand, and that's my signal to stop talking. So yes, thank you. Who Dissel said that. No is a complete answer that helps me when I'm dealing with a client who will not allow my leadership fully. He's dictating and then asking my opinion. Yeah, that's rough, right? Like, they don't know how to run a design business. So it took me years to know how to run a design business. I know for sure my clients don't know how to run one. So I have to be the expert.
Well, at this time, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, Kimberly, for all of your guidance and advice, and for this presentation today.
Well, thank you. Thanks to you guys, by the way, for organizing CEU content and for keeping the market going for us. I'm looking forward to being at High Point for sure.
You're welcome. And yes, if you are not able to join us for Las Vegas Market, we also have our Atlanta Market and High Point Market in the fall. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Stay well, everybody.
Thank you.